Tell me, what are you curious about?
I'm more curious on, so first I'd like to ask you, so do you believe that there's a historic Jesus? Like a
Yes,
real person?
absolutely.
Um, Personally, I think that, what's it called? He was a collection of characters into more of a singular idea. Then again, I have no proof of that either.
Yeah, well, you can't assume things, right? Tell me why you believe that in a
Uh,
sense.
I guess because, when was Jesus' time? Like almost 2,000 years ago?
Yeah, about
Uh,
almost 2,000 years ago in the first century.
I'm not sure how many records we have of him, especially that I see people say, it's Jesus of Nazareth or Jesus of, what's it called, Bethlehem.
Mhm.
I forgot which one.
He was born in Bethlehem, right? But he was raised in Nazareth.
Yeah, because I was thinking it was like, was the Jewish Messiah needed to be from Nazareth or whatever?
Yes, sir.
So do you believe in the Trinity?
Yeah, absolutely.
I don't know, because there's something I feel like with the, what's it called, biblical scholars think that it was added later by monks to try and legitimize the Catholic Church.
Yeah, there's no evidence of that.
I think I need to look back onto the actual records on why biblical scholars believe that.
Yeah, like I would say this, right? The reason, because you say you believe like Jesus collection, kind of, right?
Yeah,
I would
like a bunch of different people kind of collect into a singular idea.
Yeah, that's interesting. Like that's the first time I actually heard that kind of belief system. But I believe that Jesus was a historical figure, and the reason why is because all four gospels, which kind of report him, they're written in the first century. Just sometime after he rose or died, depending on your belief system. So, with that being said, since we have four different independent and interdependent authors, right? They're testifying of one man, I just don't think it would make any sense if it was a collective of people, you know what I mean? Because otherwise we would have, one gospel saying, oh, Jesus did this, but he did not do this, or Jesus did that, but he did not do that. You know what I mean?
I guess I can kind of see what you mean. Although, because I'm coming at this from the perspective, like, someone who doesn't believe.
Yeah.
And so, like I said, I'm trying to give like a neutral perspective on this. What do you think of the fact that there's a bunch of different denominations, like what, like 4,000, over 4,000 denominations?
Yeah.
So if it was written by God, wouldn't you expect it to all be one thing?
Yeah, like you would kind of notice this across like all denominations, right? Every single one of us believes in a Nicene Creed, right? Which was, I'm pretty sure you know what the Nicene Creed is, right?
What?
The Nicene Creed.
I don't think I heard that one.
Yeah, the Nicene Creed is like a Christian creed that all Christians throughout like history has agreed on. Like it was formed at the Council of Nicaea to combat like heresy and all that sort of thing, right?
I've heard of that one.
Yeah. So the Council of Nicaea is something that all Christians agree with. You see this even across all these many different denominations, right? We just have different beliefs on tertiary beliefs, secondary beliefs, stuff like that. But the main primary doctrine of Christianity has always been the same, that Jesus Christ came down, died for your sins, and that if you believe in him, put your faith in him, you will be saved. That's been always the main doctrine of Christianity.
The only thing that I think confuses me the most about the Trinity, though, is that, so if Jesus is God, then what was the point of his sacrifice? Was he sacrificing himself to himself in order to make the rule that he made?
This is the interesting thing about the Trinity, right? Like, the Trinity is like, there's one God, right? One undivided essence, right? Three co-equal, co-eternal persons, the Father, the Son, the Holy Spirit, right? And so the Father sent the Son, right? And, and so the Son became incarnate into flesh, had blood, flesh, just like you and I, right? And he took the punishment that we deserved on the cross, right? We deserve death, right? Because of our sin, because God is a just God. But Christ took that punishment and paid the price for us so that whoever puts their faith and trust in him, they have that sacrifice applied to them, basically.
I guess you can say that. Something else I was thinking about. So, what I'm wondering, how does other religions work with Christianity in the sense of are they all just like heresy made by men, or?
I could use Islam as an example, I guess. Islam, for example, it contradicts Christian doctrine, right?
Yeah.
He wasn't crucified. He didn't rise from the dead, stuff like that. But he did ascend to God. He did ascend to Allah, right? But they don't believe that he's the son of God. They don't believe that he's God himself.
Yeah.
So
I was gonna say, from what my mother told me, because she's Muslim,
yeah.
She grew up in Turkey. But she always.
You look kind of Turkish. I was
like, my mother's Turkish. My dad was Christian. He was born here in I think Waycross. But she said that, they always believed that Jesus was a prophet. He was, he was something like that, but he wasn't directly the Messiah.
Yeah.
I think Jews are kind of similar way. They don't think he was
Well,
the
no.
Messiah.
Muslims believe that Jesus is the Messiah. The Quran says.
So they did believe that Jesus was the Messiah?
Yeah, Muslims believe Jesus is the Messiah. But they don't know where that comes from, though. That comes from Judaism and Christianity.
All I remember specifically is that they said that Jesus was still important to Muslims as well.
Yeah, they say that he's a very good prophet. But you kind of notice that a lot of these different belief systems, they de-elevate Jesus, right? And they say that he's only just a mere man. We as Christians are claiming that he's not just a mere man.
He was the Son of God.
Yeah, he's the Son of God. He's God incarnate. So, that's the Christian. Can I ask why you're an atheist?
Oh, absolutely. So personally, I was kind of hoping you'd ask that, be real. Although I'm not here to try and let's go make you an atheist or things like that, because in fact, no good can come from that.
Yeah.
Personally, for why I believe, I guess I say believe, I guess lack of belief. It's that I just personally don't really see there being evidence for a God, at least hard evidence. You see, the way I like to describe it is that often most of the arguments I hear for the existence of God and stuff like that, I feel like are either circumstantial or are something like God of the gaps. You know that logical fallacy?
Yeah. So, what would you define as evidence then?
That's the thing when it comes to God, is something inherently supernatural. One would describe it as inherently unscientific. But the thing is that the way I've heard it described is, let's take for an example, like Harry Potter, like magic, stuff like that. Like, they could do the things and you would see it happen.
Yeah.
But a lot of the things that I feel like people use for evidence of God, like faith healing and stuff like that, is either coincidental or there's a chance it could be coincidental. The thing when it comes to scientific study and scientific evidence, it needs to be if there's a chance for even other things, it makes it, I guess, when are we going to point to the supernatural?
Yeah.
It feels like, it should be some of the last things we do.
Well, this is kind of the thing, right? Because I know before I became a Christian, I believed in a God, right? That was kind of my natural predisposition. But I know that some people are probably different. But the reason I became convinced of Christianity was the prophecies of Christ. I don't know if you're aware of those, but not just that.
I've heard some of them.
Yeah, but the historical evidence, right, of the resurrection of the dead. I would suggest you look into that, right? Because I think historical evidence can point to miracles. I think the resurrection is the most documented, greatest miracle in the history of just everything, right?
The only issue with that is I've heard a lot of conflicting data when it comes to the resurrection, especially that's the 100 witnesses originally. That some people say the original 100 witnesses didn't even exist. It was the second generation that made up the first generation. That's why you don't hear the first one, any of them denounce Jesus, but the second did.
You would have to see, the problem with this is that you would have to give reasons as to why the apostles are unreliable, right? Or why the first century Christians are unreliable, because the gospels are pretty reliable, historically speaking. So you have to give evidence as to why these authors are lying about this specific man rising from the dead. I don't know. I truly do think that you would make a pretty good Christian. I think you're smart. I think you're an intelligent guy. I guess I can, what is preventing you from becoming a Christian?
Again, mainly, I just don't think that there is, evidence for there being a God. And the thing is, why would I believe in something if I don't have any reason to believe it?
Yeah.
And also, when I think about it, what would really change if I was a Christian? I feel like I'd still be doing what I'm already doing. And, also, like I said, without there being solid evidence, it's the same way that Bill Nye described in his debate with Ken Ham over creation versus evolution.
Yeah.
He said there's a question at the end of the debate that they asked both of them. And I liked Bill Nye's response. He said that, if evidence was to point him towards creation and there being a God, he would have no choice but to believe in it, then. But as it stands right now, there just isn't enough to justify a belief.
Yeah, I would disagree with Bill Nye, right? I think there is enough evidence to justify a belief in a God, right? If a God exists, let's grant that a God exists for just one moment. If he's a personal God, he would have to give evidence of his existence, right? And I think that between the resurrection and between creation itself, I think that in the complexity of life, I think he has given enough evidence for his existence, even though some people may disagree.
The main thing I was using that quote as an example for is that it's not that, because I really hate this whenever this happens. People will be like, oh, you're just mad at God or whatever. You know he exists, but you just don't want to believe in him. It's like, well, that doesn't really make sense. You can't choose not to believe in something. If you either believe or you don't. It's not like I'm actively choosing not to be a Christian or whatever. Yeah. I mean, like I said, if there was evidence, then absolutely I would be. I would accept the new evidence as I saw it. But as it stands personally, as of right now, I just don't think there is.
I would say this, right? I think you need to define the evidence that you want, right? Because once you define the evidence that you want, it'll become much easier to look at what Christianity claims and either outright reject it or outright accept it, right? Define the evidence that you want. Look at the claims of each religion, because each religion claims to be exclusive, right? It claims to be exclusive. It claims that Islam claims, Muhammad is the way. Christianity claims that Jesus is the way. What evidence is, kind of good, for you? And I think you need to look at that. So, that's my perspective, right? Because it's hard for me to convince you because I don't know what evidence. Hard evidence is very subjective.
I was gonna say that's the thing it comes down to, is because it needs to be proven beyond a reasonable doubt. But
nothing can be proven beyond a reasonable doubt.
What's the definition for reasonable doubt? Which that's what some people say. People have different standards of evidence. And I guess personally, for me, I mean, I'm not going to say myself I'm the authority on what is and isn't hard evidence. I guess I would have to come down to the scientific consensus, which, as a
scientific consensus changes, man.
That's the thing, and that's how science works. Which that's why I say, if in the future we ever came with, absolute evidence of not only there being a God, but a specifically the Christian God, then I would, like I said, I would have no choice but to accept the new evidence.
Do you so if Christ were to come to you right now, would you become a Christian and change your behavior?
I mean, there are some people who say that they've seen God come, or whoever their God was, come to them in person. Some people say they've met Krishna, for example, stuff like that. Although I think it would be slightly more convincing than some things. How some people say there would be the rapture or whatever and the tribulation, all that stuff. If that were to happen, I think that'd be pretty heavy, especially if Jesus' return did happen.
It's very difficult. If somebody did perform a miracle in front of you, right? Mm-hmm. How exactly would you know if that's from God or if that's not from God?
That's the thing. Also, here I was talking to my Muslim friend. We were talking about this. He was asking me, how could he prove it to me? He's like, what if all these miracles happen? I'm like, okay. To cut this down a bit, let's assume, for the sake of argument, that a miracle does happen, and we prove with a 100% certainty that God exists. The problem is we don't know what God that is. Let's say we absolutely know there is a God. We don't know what God that is, or to what religion that is, or even how many gods that are. We just know that there is some higher being. Yeah. I feel like that's another issue that we would run into. How would we know specifically it's the God of the Bible?
Well, the evidence, right? What current evidence there is now, and what evidence it kind of points to. But yet again, you haven't given your objective perspective, and you have to define what evidence. Because my evidence is just clear. I think my evidence is historical evidence. It's what is most likely? Occam's razor? What's most likely? And I think most likely there is a God compared to most likely there's not a God. I think that because you believe that Jesus Christ was a collection of people, individuals.
Yeah, a collection of stories put together.
I disagree with that wholeheartedly. Most scholars in history would disagree with that. What we can confirm with utmost certainty is that Jesus Christ did live as a man, that he did die. Now, was he raised? It's the question, and that's what determines kind of whether Christianity is true or false.